Picture a sleepy town, houses lined up neat and tidy, kids pedaling bikes down cracked sidewalks, neighbors nodding over picket fences. Willow Creek, Ohio, was that kind of place, until it wasn't. One house stood apart, a shadow among the sunlight, its paint peeling, windows boarded, a quiet that felt wrong. In 2018, a whisper tore through that silence. A little girl's voice, faint and trembling, reached out from that house through a 911 call. Please, they won't stop hurting me. Her name was Ellie Harper, and what unraveled next wasn't just a crime. It was a descent into a nightmare so twisted, so shattering, it's been whispered as the worst child abuse case in decades. You'll feel the tears sting, the anger burn, and you won't believe how deep this darkness runs. Stay with me. The truth is a wound that won't close. Welcome to Crime Mysteries Uncovered, where the shadows speak and the buried scream. I'm your guide. No face, no name, just a voice pulling back the curtain on humanity's blackest corners. We don't just tell stories here. We dig into them, clawing at the layers until the bones show. If you're new, subscribe, join us. Every week, we step into mysteries that clutch your soul and hold tight. Today, it's Ellie Harper, a child trapped in a hell no one should endure. This isn't a quick tale. It's a journey that'll carve itself into you. Settle in, let's walk this road together. You won't want to turn away. It started on April 12, 2018, in Willow Creek, a town of 3,000 souls nestled among Ohio's rolling fields. At 7:43 p.m., the county 911 line buzzed alive. A voice came through, so soft the dispatcher, Carol Hayes, leaned closer to hear. Help me, they locked me downstairs. I'm so hungry, it said, each word brittle, like glass about to break. Carol's hands shook as she typed. Sweetie, where are you? She asked, her voice steady despite the dread curling in her gut. The bad house, on Elm, the girl whispered. Then, nothing. A click, a hiss of static, and the line died. Carol stared at the screen, her breath caught, knowing something terrible was unfolding. Police cars rolled out fast, tires crunching gravel as they converged on 142 Elm Street. The house loomed, a tired relic with sagging eaves and a front yard choked with weeds. Officer Daniel Ruiz stepped up first, his knuckles rapping the door. Silence answered. He knocked again, harder, the sound swallowed by the evening air. A faint thud echoed from inside, soft, deliberate, like a plea. Ruiz didn't wait. His boot slammed the door, wood splintering as it gave way. The smell hit like a fist. Rotting garbage, damp mold, a sour tang of neglect. Trash bags slumped in the living room, spilling wrappers and cans. Walls bore streaks of grime, fingerprints smudged in patterns no one could read. A basement door stood out, padlocked tight, its paint chipped red. Ruiz grabbed a crowbar from his belt, metal screeching as he pried the lock free. Stairs descended into shadow, each step creaking under his weight. At the bottom, he saw her, Ellie Harper, 8 years old, a wisp of a girl curled on a stained mattress. She weighed 32 pounds, her bones sharp under skin stretched too thin. Bruises bloomed across her, purple on her arms, yellow on her legs, black around her eyes. Blonde hair hung in clumps, matted with dirt, and those blue eyes, wide, empty, stared up at him. She didn't cry, didn't flinch, just watched, like she'd forgotten what safety felt like. Ruiz knelt, his voice cracking as he said, "You're safe now, kid." But the air told a different story. Something worse waited here, something that wouldn't let go easy. The basement was a tomb. Concrete walls wept with damp, a single bulb flickered overhead, casting jagged shadows. Ellie's mattress sat beside a rusted bucket, her toilet, half full and stinking. A cracked plate held crumbs, a crust of bread gone green. Officers fanned out, their boots scuffing dust, voices low but tense. They found a trunk in the corner, wooden, locked with a rusty clasp. Inside, photos, dozens of them, Polaroids yellowed at the edges. Ellie as a toddler, smiling, chubby cheeks and bright eyes, held by a woman with a tight smile. Later shots showed her thinner, paler, her gaze dimming. The last one, a skeletal Ellie, maybe 6, staring blank at the camera, a man's hand gripping her shoulder. Ruiz swallowed hard. This wasn't a rescue anymore, it was a reckoning. Upstairs, the house whispered its secrets. A kitchen sink overflowed with dishes, flies buzzing over congealed grease. A calendar hung crooked, stuck on March 2017, like time had stopped. In the boys' room, Jake, 14, and Tommy, 12, bunk beds stood neat, comic books stacked, a stark contrast to the chaos. Mark and Lisa Harper's bedroom was sparse, a sagging mattress, a dresser with one drawer ajar, spilling socks. But under the bed, a box, letters, bills, a faded ultrasound labeled, Ellie, 2010. She'd been wanted once, planned, a third child to round out the family. What changed? The question hung heavy as officers bagged evidence, each find a thread in a tapestry of pain. Ellie wasn't alone in that house. Mark Harper, 42, was a mechanic, hands rough from years at the garage, temper rougher still. Neighbors knew his bellow, the way it rattled windows when he'd had too much beer. Lisa, 38, worked the register at Miller's grocery, her eyes downcast, her voice a murmur. Jake and Tommy, the boys, kept to themselves, skateboards their escape from whatever brewed at home. To Willow Creek, they were ordinary, a family scraping by, nothing special. But ordinary doesn't lock a child in a crate. Ordinary doesn't starve her until her ribs poke through like a birdcage. Ellie's prison was a dog crate, 18 inches wide, 24 long, 15 high, shoved against the basement wall. She'd slept there, knees tucked to chest, for years. Food came when Mark felt like it. Scraps of bread, a spoonful of cold soup, water in a dented can that tasted of rust. Punishment was ritual. A belt, its leather worn smooth, left welts like red rivers on her back. A cigarette lighter, Mark's favorite, kissed her skin, leaving puckered burns, a map of his rage. Lisa didn't stop him. She'd stand at the basement door, arms crossed, eyes blank, as Ellie's whimpers faded to silence. The boys learned early. Don't look, don't ask, don't care. Jake once muttered, "She's just loud," when Tommy flinched at a scream. A journal changed everything. Hidden under Ellie's mattress, its pages were brittle, stained with tears and dirt. Her handwriting wobbled, pencil marks faint. Daddy says I'm bad. Mommy says I'm nothing. I want to fly away. Each entry carved deeper. They locked me in the dark again. My tummy hurts so bad. I tried to be quiet but he hit me anyway. She'd drawn pictures too. Stick figures of a girl with wings, a house on fire, a sun she couldn't reach. One page stood out, dated weeks before the call. I heard Mommy crying upstairs. She said she's sorry. Why doesn't she help me? The words twisted like a knife. Lisa knew, felt something, but let the horror grow. Mark's rage had roots. He'd been laid off in 2014, the garage cutting shifts, and money tightened. Ellie, born premature, drained their savings, hospital bills, formula, a crib they couldn't afford. He blamed her, called her weak, a mistake. Lisa's silence had its own story. Her mother beat her as a kid, locked her in closets for spilling milk. She'd married Mark to escape, only to trade one cage for another. Together, they built a machine of misery, and Ellie was its fuel. The boys adapted. Jake buried himself in video games. Tommy sketched cars in notebooks, both numb to the girl downstairs. But the journal hinted at cracks. Lisa's tears, a fracture Mark couldn't beat shut. The police didn't stop digging. Photos catalogued Ellie's body. Bruises layered like seasons, some fresh, some faded to ghosts. X-rays showed ribs cracked and rahelled, a wrist bent wrong from a twist years back. Burns dotted her arms, her thighs, a constellation of cruelty. Neighbors squirmed when questioned. Mrs. Jenkins, next door, Admitted she'd seen Ellie at a window once, pale as a wraith, but figured it wasn't her place. Mr. Tate, across the street, heard Mark yelling, Ellie crying, but shrugged. Families fight. The excuses piled up, a wall of apathy that kept her trapped. Mark and Lisa spun their tale. She's troubled, Mark said, arms crossed in the interrogation room, his voice flat. Always hurting herself, running into things. Lisa nodded, eyes on the floor. She fell a lot. We tried to help. The boys echoed it, Jake monotone, Tommy fidgeting with his sleeve. Detectives weren't fooled. The crate, the burns, the starvation, no fool explained that. Then came the letter. Mrs. Clara Evans, Ellie's third-grade teacher, had written it in 2016. Ellie came to school with welts on her arms. She said her dad got mad. I'm worried. Sent to CPS. It vanished, lost in a shuffle of understaffed desks. No visit, no call, just a girl left to rot. That letter sparked fury. Detective Sarah Mills, led on the case, slammed it on her desk. 2 years, she hissed. 2 years we could have saved her. She interviewed Miss Isvans, a graying woman with trembling hands. Ellie was so quiet, the teacher said. She'd hide her arms under her sweater. I begged them to check. CPS files showed nothing. No record, no trace. Mills dug deeper, finding a pattern. Willow Creek's office had lost reports before, kids slipping through cracks. Mark's arrest was loud. He shouted, she deserved it. As cuffs snapped on, Lisa just stared, mute, her apology locked somewhere Ellie couldn't hear. The trial hit in October 2019. Ellie couldn't face the room. Too frail, too shattered, so a social worker, Grace Palmer, read her words. Daddy hit me when I cried. Mommy locked me up when I asked for food. I tried to be good, but they didn't love me. The courtroom stilled. Jurors wept, hands pressed to mouths. A woman in the back row sobbed loud enough to echo. Grace's voice broke as she continued. They put me in the dark box. It was cold. I wanted to be warm. Mark glared from the defense table. Lisa looked at her lap, the weight of Ellie's truth pinning him down. Why did it happen? Mark saw Ellie as a drain. Her birth a bill he couldn't pay, her cries a taunt he couldn't silence. He'd snap over nothing. A spilled cup, a whimper, his belt a thunderclap, his lighter a spark of control. Lisa's past bled into it. Her mother's fists taught her to obey, to shrink, and Mark was her new master. She'd locked Ellie away like she'd been locked, a cycle she couldn't break. The boys were collateral. Jake hardened, Tommy withdrew, both trained to see their sister as noise. Ellie's final words, read by Grace, cut deepest. I just wanted them to love me. Not escape, not vengeance, just a love she'd never felt. The evidence piled high. Photos projected on a screen. Ellie's crate, its bars rusted, her mattress a patchwork of stains. Medical reports listed malnutrition, anemia, scars inside and out. A psychologist, Dr. Helen Reese, testified, Mark's a narcissist. Control was his drug. Lisa's dissociative. She shut down to survive. The jury didn't flinch at the defense. Mark's lawyer claimed, exaggeration. Lisa's said, fear kept her quiet. No one bought it. Ellie's journal sealed it. Page after page of a child begging to be seen, her wings clipped by the people meant to lift her. January 2020 brought the verdict. Mark got life without parole. The judge's voice was steel. You're a predator in a father's skin. Society's safer with you gone. Lisa got 30 years. Her silence a sentence of its own. Cheers mixed with curses outside the courthouse. Willow Creek exhaled, but the air stayed heavy. Jake and Tommy went to a group home, their futures uncertain. Jake's anger simmered, Tommy's sketches turned dark. Ellie landed in foster care with the Millers, a couple in their 50s with soft voices and a yellow house. She didn't speak much at first, just clutched a teddy bear they gave her, its fur worn from her grip. Recovery was slow. Ellie flinched at loud noises, hid food under her pillow, crackers, apple slices, afraid it'd vanish. Her foster mom, Diane, sat with her at night, humming until she slept. A therapist, Dr. Patel, used puppets to coax words out. One day, Ellie smiled, a small, fleeting thing, at a bunny puppet hopping across the table. Her first laugh came months later, a sound like bells after rain. She'd never be whole, not fully, but those moments were victories, fragile as glass. Ohio reacted. CPS got an overhaul, caseworkers doubled, a law named Ellie's Act, mandating follow-ups. Too late for her, but maybe not for the next. Her story lingers. Ellie's a ghost in Willow Creek, a whisper in the wind that rattles shutters. The house on Elm sits empty, kids daring each other to touch its gate. Her case asks questions. How do we miss this? How do we let a child fade? Her spirit, beaten but unbroken, holds a mirror to us all. What do we see? A girl who dreamed of flying, caged by hands that should have held her. A town that looked away. A system that failed. Ellie Harper's not just a tragedy. She's a call, a cry we can't ignore. And that's her story. A light drowned in shadow, then flickering back, defiant. It's why we're here at Crime Mysteries Uncovered. To chase these truths, to give them breath. If Ellie's pain struck you, hit that like. It's a nod to her fight. Not subscribed. Join us, more mysteries wait, stories that claw at your chest. Tell me below, what broke you most? What case should we unravel next? Another child's silent scream, a secret buried in plain sight, we'll find it together. Until then, keep listening, keep caring. Good night.